Good evening. As you may or may not know, last Thursday we had the spring session of Cal Poly Pomona's Pizza with the Presidents. In this discussion, our fellow students were allowed to ask the Dean of the University, as well as the Presidents of Student Affairs and the chairs of the numerous academic departments we have on campus, about campus administration. One of the major concerns that our fellow students had was that their education was not being properly tended to. A lot of them believe, and were not shy to express, that despite paying very high amounts of tuition, they were not receiving what they believed to be a satisfactory level of education. However, I would like, in the end, I believe it's not administration's fault or the fault of the Cal State system itself. I would like to present for your consideration the following. Whether we'd like to admit it or not, the truth is the entire American education system is inherently flawed. The U.S. education system is less effective than the education systems of other industrialized nations of the world. I'll go about proving this by showing how U.S. education is not properly funded, not properly administrated, and does not prepare our students for professional life. The first way that U.S. education is less effective is the cash flow, or rather lack thereof, into our education system. In the last 10 years, as a nation, we have cut funds from the education department more often than in any other department of the federal government. In 2001, about $500 billion was spent on education, equivalent to about $32,100 per capita. Comparatively, we only spent about $10,000 per capita this last year. Now, while this may still seem like quite a bit, especially in a recession like we're having, consider the following. In that same year, this California State Justice Department spent $43,000 on prisoners. Now, while I have nothing against prisoners, I think it's rather sad that our government is spending more money, investing more money on keeping people in jail than providing them the skills to keep them out. My second point will be that U.S. education is less effective than others because it's not properly administrated. When the Bush administration created the No Child Left Behind Act in 2002, the aim was to create standardized testing so that all students would be given an equal opportunity to quality education. This was done through something called the Adequate Yearly Progress Report, or the AYP. Basically, this is a measurement of how much better students were doing in standardized testing this year as compared to last year. Unfortunately, the federal government left the selection of how progress was defined to the states. As a result, different states had different ways of quantifying progress. In a New York Times article, it was shown that there was a stark polarity between the graduation rates in different parts of the country. For example, the rural South only had about 69% graduation rate, while the Northeast, especially in Massachusetts and Vermont, had an 85% graduation rate. Another issue lies in the fact that working hard to understand material in order to get in college is no longer the only way to get accepted to a good university. I'm of course talking about the NCAA and the full-year sports scholarships provided to Division I schools. Take, for example, USC, which is allowed to provide full scholarships to students that are of our particular skill in football, basketball, or in baseball. Now, I personally believe that it is ineffective to provide these scholarships, seeing as how, according to the NCAA, only about 1.3% of students who are in these NCAA programs ever go on to play professional sports. Further, this means that Division I schools are required to keep scholar athletes on field for the entire 4 years, meaning that one too many injuries on field could result in someone paying $40,000 after paying not a dime out of pocket for the previous 3 years. The third way that U.S. education is less effective is that our students are not as well prepared for professional life as their counterparts would, especially in Japan. By any chance, do you guys know what U.S. private school produces the most future CEOs and entrepreneurs? Now, this might surprise you, but it's not Harvard, it's not any Ivy League. In fact, the school that is responsible for this incredible record is a Japanese weekend school in New York's Queens Borough. This school, which was formed for the children of Japanese expatriates, was named in 1989 by New York Magazine as the most influential private school no one's heard about. While the normal American school system meets for 5 days a week over 18 years, which is approximately the time required by most people to get a bachelor's degree, the Japanese school system also requires a 3-hour session every Saturday. This means that comparatively, American students spend 13% less time in the classroom than their Japanese counterparts. This is equivalent to American students missing 2.5 years of school. Now, this is actually conducive to why we're lagging behind. According to Martha Cantor, who is the Undersecretary of Education, in a recent study comparing the students of the 21 top industrialized nations, American students test 19th out of 21st in mathematical skills, 16th out of 21st in general science skills, and dead last in advanced physics. No child left behind? Unfortunately, it seems like our entire system's been left behind. Thank you.
All right, there are actually two propositions at the beginning of the speech. They both basically say the same thing, so you can probably get rid of one. The secondary issues need to be laid out at the beginning of the speech, so we have a roadmap for where we're headed. I thought your internal signposting on those points was relatively clear. I thought you did a nice job trying to establish credibility by your presentation, speaking forcefully and directly to the audience for the most part, and you have some interesting language tools that you're using to also make the point, so that helps a bit too. Excuse me, the evidence on the problems with the American educational system that is statistical in nature, I think you've got some solid numbers on that. The connection or the contrast to other competing systems, for instance, you mentioned that New York school and then you're talking about the Japanese schools. I think we need to have a little bit more connection between the hours spent in school and long-term outcomes. I think there's probably good information to support that, but it seems to be an assumption here. On the point about the scholarships, I'm not exactly sure that that advances your claim. It seems mostly that your argument is that because people don't go on to a career in the sport that they get a scholarship in, that they're not getting anything productive out of the school that they attend. And I think that's a very strange inference, since the vast majority of students know that there's not a professional career in running track or playing tennis or being on the women's volleyball team, you know, those kinds of things. The high-profile sports issue, of course, is the thing that most people pay attention to. You mentioned baseball, basketball, and football as your illustrations, but even then I'm not sure that you've got the right data here. What you need is data that says that we're giving scholarships to these people and they're not graduating, they're not producing any kind of results. That's the stuff that I think would make your argument a little bit stronger there. All right, thank you.